All right, let's talk about something that happens in a lot of relationships, but can be really confusing. We're going to get into this pattern, the one where things start out super intense, all consuming, and then it just kind of fades, right? It's a feeling so many of us have had. You meet someone, it's just electric, a total whirlwind. And then, a few weeks or maybe months down the line, that fire just cools off. And it can leave you feeling completely lost, wondering, what just happened? Well, it turns out the answer might actually be inside the brain. So let's rewind and start right at the beginning, that euphoric honeymoon phase. This is where that incredible, almost movie-like intensity comes from. And it's not just magic, it's tied to a very specific process that's going on neurologically. The key concept we need to understand here is something called relationship hyperfocus. See, for a brain with ADHD, which is always on the hunt for stimulation, a new person is this incredibly fascinating brand new world to explore. This triggers an intense, single-minded focus that's just powered by a massive rush of dopamine, that feel-good chemical. And you can totally see how this plays out, right? When you're in this phase, your partner is getting this amazing, undivided attention. It feels incredible. It creates this sense of euphoria, this powerful, all-consuming connection that feels like it happened overnight. It's really easy to see why both people might think, wow, this is it. I've found the one. So here's the thing to really get that initial intensity. It's not just about having strong feelings. It is a deep neurobiological response. The sheer novelty of a new partner provides the exact kind of stimulation the ADHD brain is wired to crave, which makes that connection feel so rewarding. But we all know that peak intensity can't last forever. In any relationship, as you get to know each other, that exciting newness naturally starts to settle into something more comfortable, more routine. And for the ADHD brain, this shift is a really big deal. And this right here, this is the turning point. As the relationship settles into a familiar, comfortable rhythm, the brain just isn't getting that same hit of novelty anymore. And what happens then? Well, the production of dopamine tied to the relationship, it naturally starts to decrease. This chart really shows you exactly what's happening chemically. In the beginning, during that high novelty phase, dopamine levels are just through the roof. But as things settle into a routine, look at that. The level drops. A lot. It's not that the love is gone, not at all, but the brain's whole reward system has just shifted gears. And listen, if you take one thing away from this section, please let it be this. That fade-out feeling, it is not a sign that someone is falling out of love. It's not a lack of commitment. It is a predictable, biological shift in brain chemistry. Just understanding this can get rid of so much of the blame and hurt and confusion that usually comes with it. So, how does this dopamine drop actually affect physical intimacy? This brings us to a really fascinating idea called the intimacy pendulum. You see, to deal with these fluctuating levels of stimulation, the ADHD brain can sometimes swing between two very different states when it comes to physical connection and intimacy. So on one side of this pendulum, you can have what's called hypersexuality. This is where the brain is actively seeking out that intense physical connection to get the dopamine rush it's now missing. But then, the pendulum can swing all the way to the other side, to hyposexuality. In this state, a person might feel completely touched out or overwhelmed. Intimacy itself can feel like way too much stimulation, causing them to pull back. You can imagine how confusing this back and forth can be for a partner who has no idea what's driving it. And it's not just about dopamine either. There's another huge piece to this puzzle that is so important to understand when we're talking about ADHD and intimacy: sensory sensitivity. For a lot of people with ADHD, sensory input, touch, sound, even textures, is experienced way more intensely. So during intimacy, this can mean that a certain kind of touch might actually feel irritating instead of pleasurable. The tag on a shirt, a noise from outside, the texture of the bed sheets, any of it can be enough to completely pull their focus away, making it so hard to stay present in the moment. Okay, so let's put all of these pieces together now, because when you see the whole cycle, you can move away from feeling confused and hurt and start looking at it with a totally new perspective. So here it is, the whole loop in 4 simple steps. It kicks off with that intense hyperfocus on a new partner. That leads to a euphoric, dopamine-soaked connection. Then, as routine settles in, the dopamine drops. And finally, that can cause intimacy to shift and the connection to feel like it's fading.
And we come right back to the most important point of this whole explainer. This pattern, it's not a personal failing. It's not a sign that the relationship is broken or that the love is gone. It is a predictable loop rooted in neurobiology. And seeing it that way lets you approach the challenge with curiosity and strategy instead of blame and hurt feelings.
And that brings us to one last question, something for you to think about. If we know that our brain chemistry plays such a massive role in how we connect with people, how can that knowledge help us build more resilient, more compassionate, and maybe more realistic expectations for what love and intimacy really look like over the long haul? Thanks for watching.